Greetings. Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Old Dude Owens, and it is my pleasure to welcome SoGoBrook and Vera Lata to the PVC NYC TV, which is the name I've given this series because it sounds like it's alliterative and rhymes, and I couldn't think of anything better. And the purpose of this get-together is to talk about what everyone's doing in preparation for and after the January 20th, 2024 People's Voice Cafe concert featuring all of you. And I really appreciate the fact you've taken the time to join me here today. What I'd like to do is I'd like to start by asking you, Denise and Andrew, to talk a little bit about yourselves. Where were you guys raised? How did you connect? Who started playing music first? Let's make it a little competitive. What instruments do you guys play, and how did you end up with some of the musical influences that you have now? And I'll basically ask the same question of you, Daniel and Tracy. So welcome, and Denise and Andrew, you have the floor. And Andrew, you're muted, so you may want to unmute.
So maybe I'll start, and I'm going to try to remember all the questions you asked, but I might forget. So
well, as they say on Saturday Night Live, just talk amongst yourselves, about your life. Talk about your life.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So I was born in Uruguay, in Montevideo, Uruguay, which is where I am right now, and I started playing music around the age of 6. Music was very, very central to my life through the first 9 years of my life, I would say. My father is a classical guitarist, although he doesn't play so much anymore. And music was incredibly important here growing up because I was born in the context of an authoritarian dictatorship. And so music was a way in which people communicated their resistance to authoritarianism, and that was very much the case in my family, that we listened to songs and we talked about songs in relation to what was happening politically in the country. So music has always been interwoven with politics for me, but it was even more so when I was little. So when I was 9 years old, I moved to Canada with my family and continued playing music through high school, pretty much. I was playing the recorder for a while and the violin.
Yay, recorders!
I was a very serious recorder player, actually. And I played the cello and the clarinet. And eventually I stopped all of that and started playing the guitar around the age of 17 or 18, when I started learning a lot of the songs that I grew up with. And that was my initial focus, was just learning all these Latin American songs that I had listened to when I was little.
Did you find that it was easy to make the transfer from recorder to clarinet? Because I did the exact same thing. It was like recorder, then clarinet, and I played the cello for years and years and years. But I didn't do guitar. I couldn't deal with the finger stuff. But I play piano.
Right. Well, it's easy to make the transition in terms of fingering, but not in terms of trying to make sound with a reed instrument. I think it's a very challenging thing in relation to the recorder. So I had a really hard time with it.
I tried the bassoon, and that was much harder. Not only that,
yes.
Not only that, but it's like when you play the recorder or the guitar or the piano, your fingers are in front of you. Right? So even though you don't have to see, you don't need them to know where the notes are, you're used to having them there. When I started trying to play the bassoon, an instrument whose sound I love, your fingers are on the other side of the instrument. I could not see them. And it was a mental block. I never could learn the bassoon because I couldn't see my fingers. It was like very upsetting. But anyway, I'm sorry. Continue.
But I agree, it is a beautiful instrument. So anyway, one thing led to another. I lived for a while in Uruguay again, and then I lived in Brazil for a while and ignored music for probably a decade and a half and started playing music seriously again when I moved back to New York City in 2008. And that's when I started really writing songs. I had been writing songs before in college a little bit, but I started really more seriously writing songs in 2008. By that time, I was in my 30s. And eventually, to make a long story short, I met Andrew and we started playing music together, I think very soon after we met, maybe in late 2018 or early 2019. And I had collaborated with other people before, but I think we had a kind of synergy that led our music to take off, and a similar vision of what we wanted to do, and similar backgrounds in some ways and not in others, which made it also interesting. And so we started this project, which initially was called Chinelo Perdido, which means the lost flip-flop in Portuguese. And now the project is called Vera Lata, which is a name, but it actually sounds like a word that exists both in Portuguese and in Spanish, especially Uruguayan Spanish, which means the creature that turns over the garbage cans, which is to say street dogs. So Vera Lata is a word for a street dog.
Not raccoons, it's street dogs.
No, it's specifically for dogs, and so that's the name of our band. But I'll let Andy talk a little bit about his own background.
Well, let me just ask you one question before we go to Andrew. You said Uruguayan Spanish. Okay, so I'd be ignorant. How is Uruguayan Spanish different from all other Spanishes?
Well, Spanish is different in each country where people speak Spanish in the way that English is also different if you go from the United States to Australia, for example. Uruguayan Spanish is very similar to Argentinian Spanish and has a very heavy influence of Italian. So when you listen to Uruguayan people speak Spanish, it can sound like Italian. And it's the way people speak here. A lot of words have been borrowed or appropriated from Portuguese. And there are also a few words from Guarani, which is an indigenous language of people in the region.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Andrew, how about you?
You said this was a competition. Wait, Denise, you said 6 is when you started? So I'm going to go with 5.5 is when I started.
He's older than me, though. I'll just say this right off. So
then I win twice, right?
He wins. Yeah, he usually wins.
So my story is much shorter and less interesting than Denise's, I have to say. But I started on accordion. And, that was out of convenience, and also so my mom was Brazilian, and accordion is a relatively popular instrument there in a very different way than it's used in the US a lot. So started with that. Eventually I realized it wasn't giving me the social capital I really needed, I think, to survive.
Wait. You weren't a chick magnet with an accordion?
It's hard to believe, right? But somehow it didn't work out for me the way one would expect. So then I went to various other instruments and played trumpet for a very long time, mostly orchestral, and then started studying jazz a little bit and, learned other instruments along the way, kind of just for fun. It eventually ended up, by the time I got to college, with a big band called All God's Children, which played kind of revolutionary folk songs from around the world, but in like a free jazz kind of, well, that's not exactly true, in a way that ranged from traditional to free jazz and Captain Beefhearty mixed with Guthrie, so it was kind of a little bit of everything, and the musicians were absolutely fabulous, and I was easily the worst player in that group, which ranged from an 8-piece to a 18-piece, with a tuba player, a microphonic tuba player, and accordionist. Again, I lost my chance to get that accordion seat, but and I just learned a tremendous amount. And it started actually, so when I was younger, this is a non-linear story, music was more a social bomb for me. It helped me socially more than any other way. It gave me a group of people to be a part of. As I got older, got into kind of college age, I started recognizing the political the power that music can have and what it can do just in terms of, I don't want to say amplifying voices, but hearing things from different voices. How about that? Including my own. And so that was really wonderful and a wonderful awakening. Played for a very long time, ended up doing film composing and that kind of stuff. And then it died down a little bit as life gets complicated and full of needing to pay rent. But then, yeah, as Denise said, we connected, became friends very quickly because of some shared backgrounds. Yeah, it's kind of the South American connection. And, I grew up with a lot of Brazilian music, but also a lot of music from the United States. And we did have really interesting overlap and really interesting differences in the way we approached things. And, ultimately we're able to synthesize or mix, I'll say more than synthesize, a lot of these sounds together and have a tremendous amount of fun playing it. And so hopefully that'll come through on the 20th. We'll see though.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. Let me ask you just one question. You guys met in 2018, approximately? Okay. Yeah. What were you doing when you met?
Having dinner.
I think we initially had a drink. We met, Andrew came on his motorcycle and I came on my bicycle to a specific meeting point where we had maybe a beer and then went for a walk in Central Park.
Oh, okay. But I guess I'm just trying to understand. You came from very different places. What drew you together? I mean,
it's interesting. So we have this really shared musical experience, but I think what drew us together was that combined with we're steeped in academia as well in terms of rent paying. So we have an amazing amount of overlap in both the way we've lived our lives and the way we kind of envision, art and critical thought moving forward. So yeah, it was very hard not to become really, really good friends with her really quickly.
That's very cool.
And I would say musically that what brought us together is a shared love of Ani DiFranco.
Oh, okay.
And also of a particular song that we plan to play on the 20th.
Excellent. We like previews.
Ballad of the Fallen, which we'll tell you a story about it later.
Okay.
But how did you know about each other to even decide to meet?
Random connections.
Random connections. People.
Yeah.
I think you should meet this person. I think you should meet this person. Both of you are intellectuals with academic backgrounds, and your Thanksgivings must be so stimulating. Right, I get it. Sounds cool. So Tracy and Daniel, how about you guys? Tracy, how did you start out, and what were you doing, and how did you get to where you are today?
Well, we met at the 615 Green Community Garden, which Daniel was in helping do stuff because he lived kind of nearby and wanted to have his hands in the dirt, I believe. And I needed to have a tree planted, a bush planted. And so he said he would help me. So he helped me get it from the garden to my front yard. And he helped me dig a hole and put it in, and we talked about things, and turns out he played the guitar and sang, and I said, oh, maybe we should play together. And so then we tried playing together a few times in the community garden and decided it was fun for each of us, and we decided to keep playing together. And that was this fall, late summer.
Wow.
And
brand new.
Yeah, brand new. And and it's very interesting because I've been an environmental activist, and I'm a lesbian feminist, and I don't want to be called guy. I'm a language. I want to change the creation of the patriarchy, which took 3,500 years, according to this woman Lerner, who wrote a book about it. And 1990, but I want to be called a peep or a hue being, not a human. And so I'm trying to like use those words myself and change the language and change the creation of remake, let go of the history of the patriarchy so that we do not have to think that all the things that we're doing in this world is, quote, normal and has to be, and there's nothing to do about it. So I don't believe that. I believe we can change. And I've been an environmentalist, and I'm in solar energy, and all my families are doctors. And so I became an acupuncturist. And then I started playing the flute about 64 or 63 years ago. And I played it about, or 65 years ago, and I played it about 63 years. Only about 2 years did I not play it. I also learned the guitar.
That was a really creative, that's a really creative way to deal with the age issue.
Do you want to, can you add, does your brain work anymore?
Exactly.
74. 74.
Awesome.
So I've been mostly, well, I played all kinds of music, Brazilian, folk, ethnic, mostly classical. And I started learning improvisation and playing blues when I was born in Denver, and then I moved to Albuquerque with my family. And I went to school in Colorado for a while, and I kind of dropped out of college and kind of came back and wrote a few things and got a degree in music and film at and then I went back to school and did science, which science is still pretty way behind. Anything in science is at least 20 years behind what doctors do. And then I went to acupuncture school finally. I studied homeopathy and herbs and all that. But meanwhile, I was doing like 5 things at once. So I finally decided that I would let myself do music more. And so I'm working, Daniel and I are working together. And of course, I have, being classical, mostly played things on paper and haven't memorized things. But I also wanted to do rap. I decided that because my efforts to get people to pay attention to climate crisis have not succeeded, that I would, and also to the just what's going on with patriarchal, like female, male. It doesn't. I don't want to be called they, them either, because I don't want to like forget about that. I am a hue being. I am a hue woo. I don't want that to get lost. It's lost right now. And so those are the kinds of things that I want to make up words to songs that Daniel and I are playing, and eventually write songs or do raps, or, figure out the normal chords that go on, like 3 or 4 chords that happen in a regular folk popular song, and learn to work with those and improvise around in the given 4, 8, or 12 bars and the chorus or whatever, and then come back in time to play notes that work, instead of people listening go, what was that? So that's kind of what I'm in the middle of my learning, like to use my brain and my capacities in a different way. And I'm in once a year in a classical concert, which this is the Brooklyn Brandenburgers, is probably backwards. But anyway, we play at the Old Stone House once a year, and we were the house band in Brooklyn. And so I'm lucky because this year there were like 12 strings and then 2 French horns, and I played 2 things. I played a Telemann Trio Sonata that was reinterpreted by this guy Mike Madigan, where I got to play the flute and there were like the strings. And then also the J.S. Bach Brandenburg number 1. And Daniel recorded it, so I asked him to. So there's a link that I can eventually, when I figure out how to invite people, if you want to listen to. It's not, by any means perfect, but that's like that's kind of what I do classical. And the string stuff was really cool.
Well, I have to say that one of the things that makes these interviews precious for me, and I say this very selfishly, is because I get to meet all these people and talk to you guys in a way that just doesn't happen when, like Daniel, when we're like going back and forth at People's Voice Cafe. And so everybody I've talked to, I want to play with. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
we have so much in common, the recorders, the piano, the classical. I was in a Brandenburg orchestra in Park Slope when I was younger, playing the cello. And my mother was my piano teacher and a classical music teacher as well. That was my background. And, I want to learn how to write climate change songs because, frankly, I find that a really tough topic to turn into songs. So I definitely hope that, as we move forward, all of us will definitely stay in touch and be more creative together, which would be really cool. And of course, with rap, rap is a challenge, particularly today. Old school rap was a lot easier to deal with than today. But, if you get your 6/4/2 and your 1/4/5s, you can figure out how to deal with chord structures. That'll work. It's just about the sounds. It's like the sounds. And my youngest son makes beats, and I keep asking, when can I hear a beat that I can get to know and try to figure out if I can do a song to it? He says, well, when I have something that's, really quality. I said, you won't know until you ask somebody else. If it's all in your head, it's like. But he's 23. What can I say?
Well,
So wow. Well, that's fascinating, Tracy. And you've had a real, you've taken a really interesting journey. I love this.
I've been around the block.
Been around the block, yes.
So, and I heard, as I was hearing what everyone else played, I thought, oh, we could do that. Oh, we could do that. We can make
Right.
From what we have here, we could have we could have all kinds of different music happen. We could have a whole other program than the one we're going to. But
Either that, or we can end the 20th with a jam session.
Well, the thing is, you have to bring your trumpet, you have to bring your accordion, you have, we'll have to play musical chair instruments and have
Hey, why not?
The
Right,
instruments.
We might need to get the People's Cafe U-Haul truck to kind of bring all the instruments to the gig.
We wish we had that.
We
So
can
Daniel, you're last but not least, of course. Tell us about where you started in life, and what's your journey?
Well, I was born in New York City. But I moved to Washington D.C. when I was 6 years old. My mother and stepfather raised me in D.C. in a wonderful environment. I had a really lovely time there, and music was a part of my life there, but I wasn't really an accomplished musician much. I was exposed to a lot of things. I took an interest in folk music. There was the folk festival on the mall, and I had mentors who told me about the blues. And I remember my step uncle Jonathan, he once made a map for me at a family event showing all the great bluesmen in the different states. Here's what you got. Here's what Texas. Here's North Carolina. And that map, I wish I still had that, because that was one of these signal moments in my life where I just realized, there is a lot out there. And I consulted record guides, and I was a little bit of a nerd about just collecting stuff and 5-star albums, the Rolling Stone record guide. Rock and roll too definitely was an influence. And so I was working on my acoustic guitar playing, and I had some basic finger picking, but then punk rock became a thing. I missed some of the really great things, but it was still happening really excitingly in DC. And so I became aware of particularly a band called Rites of Spring. It was known, so it's still sometimes said to have been the first ever emo band. And the lead singer was named Guy Picciotto, and I idolized him. I still think he was a real genius, is a real genius. And his song For Want Of, I recently made an acoustic version of in a recording studio called Least of All, which is a really interesting place where they invite people to do one take of a song and it produce only one record on vinyl. that you can then sell to someone for $20. And I'll have my least of all recordings with me on the 20th. I may even give you a discount since you've already paid to come to the People's Voice. Anyway, so that's just
Thank you.
It's a really interesting place. Anyway, better speed this up. I started a emo-ish band, slavishly imitating Rites of Spring. No, and we had a great time. And I sort of was influenced by the politics of the DC scene as well, which some people say was DIY. Ian MacKaye, and the kind of had a ripple effect for the rest of indie rock and things like that. The idea that you just don't need the big record labels, you can do this yourself, and a really strident voice too, saying, because it was the 1980s and the US was up to some really ungodly stuff, as it usually, if not always, is. So we were, I remember a protest in front of the White House, "Your president is lying," and a lot of the different members of the DC scene were holding up one of the letters right when the Iran-Contra thing was breaking. And anyway, so I definitely, and my stepfather, Mike, was very political. He had something at the time called the Advocacy Institute, which trained people to advocate on all kinds of issues, particularly tobacco and public health, and he was wildly successful at that. He was part of raising awareness from the very beginning about the dangers of cigarettes. And so, but there were also interesting tensions between us. He was a kind of dyed-in-the-wool liberal, and I was drawn more to the arts and various forms of radicalism, which he might have found a little bit dilettantish. So we had a great dialogue, and I only lost Mike this year. This is a picture. I'm here at my mother's in Santa Fe, and this is a picture of Mike Perchuk, and he's in the Federal Trade Commission. He was the chairman, actually under Carter, and he had these policies for the FTC that were so radical that the Congress actually shut them down. He was really, it was the last time maybe in the government anyone tried to do anything about big business. In one hearing, they some of the senators asked him, is there is it wrong just to be big? Trying to catch him, and he said yes. He got in big trouble because now, where are all our profits coming from? I think there are 7 companies, that generated this latest bull market or whatever. Anyway, it's all about growth. Anyway, so I was just gonna really quickly summarize the rest of it. So I got very. I think I'm a little bit more ambivalent than Andrew and Denise about academia. I spent some time dabbling, and I did finally get my master's degree in classics. But I have trouble balancing those two parts of my brain, and I end up feeling like I need to put it aside, and it's a little bit volatile for me. So maybe they can help me with a more pragmatic attitude. But anyway, I definitely. I took a really more and more of an interest in folk music, especially I was in a punk band called Giant Haystacks in my 30s, and then I realized, if I wanted to keep my hearing and and I love the acoustic guitar. I wanted to go back to it and hear those resonances. So I started when I was living back in New York City from the Bay Area, where I was with Giant Haystacks. I started studying folk music really carefully. I started learning to fingerpick, and my heroes became just a new set. Like I'd always loved Mississippi John Hurt, but I had to sit down and realize, like, what is he doing? This is true mastery. And I would spend literally days just trying to learn a song of his, and I learned about Dave Van Ronk, and at the time the mayor of McDougal Street, this great book that Elijah Wall did with him, had come out, and that I kind of had a working idea of what I thought the best kind of folk music was, and my favorites. And I love the New Low City Ramblers. I admire Mike Seeger a lot, and there's a certain kind of traditionalist aspect to it, but it's changing some of the more rugged and ragged aspects of American experience. You know, and so there's a group I'm also part of called Ragged But Riders, and that's with some old friends of mine from a community that I'm part of in the summer, and we all share that similar tastes in this kind of old-timey music.
Daniel, I'm going to interrupt you, because the one thing neither you nor Tracy have addressed is, where did you come up with the name of your group?
Oh, good.
SoGoBrook. What is that?
Do you want to explain, Tracy? Because you
have to unmute, Tracy. You need to unmute. Tracy, you need to unmute. Unmute.
Daniel's last name, right? And then I call myself, every time I play in the community garden, now I forgot what I call. What do I call myself? Brooke.
Gorilla Baroque.
Oh yeah. Gorilla
Baroque. I love that.
And that's gorilla, like gorilla who lives in the trees in the savannah. Yeah. And then Baroque, because mostly the kind of music that I play is Baroque, like, you know, Telemann, Bach, all that stuff, and the older music, some other music. But I was in a group called Mother Chord from 1975 to 1980, and we played all kinds of stuff. There was a cello, a flute, another flute who played piano, and a singer, Martha Siegel, and she was in a group with Suni Paz, which maybe you know her name.
Yes, sure.
So they were in a group together. Martha and Suni played together, and Martha plays all over the place. Martha Siegel. Anyway, so SoGoBrook, and then Daniel was going to say SoGoBrook, and I said no, let's make it the Brook, because we play under this willow tree in the garden, which is living on the streams of the Lenape, which are underground as they flow down the hill of Park Slope from the highest point, which is in the middle of Prospect Park. And that tree we never water, but it's very happy. People love it. It's on 6th Avenue and 15th Street. So SoGoBrook.
Gotcha. So Denise and Andrew, you mentioned that, or Denise, you talked about the fact that you started, writing, and the two of you, found these common grounds in terms of the things that you liked together and played. Can you give us some insight as to how well, first of all, is a large percentage of the work you do original music, or do you mostly do covers of other folks' stuff? And of the original stuff, what is the process because, collaborating is not always easy. What is the process that the two of you use to come up with a song that is the two of yours as opposed to somebody else's?
Well, I can talk a little bit about the original stuff, and maybe Andrew can talk a little bit about the ways in which we approach existing songs. So I've been writing songs for a while. I'm fairly rudimentary in my approach. I mean, I start playing the guitar and words come to me and the song evolves in that way. I've done this on my own most of my life, but I think over the past 2 years especially, I've shared my songs with Andrew, and then in the process of playing them together, I think they become more interesting, or we find ways to sometimes reharmonize them, sometimes change the rhythms a little bit. Sometimes, especially more recently with a song that we wrote to Henry Kissinger, we've worked on lyrics together. And so it's been a very sort of gradual process for me at least, of learning how to incorporate someone else's perspective to my songwriting.
I hope you're going to do the Kissinger song on the 20th.
Yes, we will definitely do the Kissinger
I gotta hear
song.
that.
We wrote it in honor of his 100th birthday.
Yeah.
So, and there's a story behind that as well, which we will probably tell when we perform it. But it's been a really lovely sort of learning experience for me, especially because outside of music, so much of my work is cerebral. To work on something with someone through the practice of playing and listening to each other. And I would say lately, probably about half of our songs are original, maybe slightly less than that. But I think for us, it's just as important to work on existing songs, and I'll let Andrew talk about that a little bit.
I think we started playing by playing other people's songs, like Brazilian
Yes.
stuff and popular stuff from the U.S. And Daniel, I was thinking about something you said before, that what brought you back to the acoustic guitar was the resonance of it, the sound of it. And when I was doing more composing and stuff like that, so like I started playing guitar because I wanted a polyphonic instrument that was smaller than piano, so it was easier to get gigs and play and write. And I started writing more and more complicated things and more like 12-tone rowy kind of things that things that you have to put a lot of effort in listening to. And ultimately, as I started aging and losing my hair, I just wanted to hear certain noises. I just wanted to hear a noise. So I started getting and collecting all these random instruments just to hear the noise of the instrument in a recording. And this was part of film scoring, but then it just became part of the way I wanted to hear things. And when I started working with Denise, it was a great opportunity to, apply this idea of, I just want to hear a noise here. And this noise should sound something like this. And by reinterpreting these bossa or samba tunes, like through like an Americana kind of aesthetic, or it's almost like a mixture of like spaghetti Western, Ennio Morricone kind of stuff and traditional Uruguayan music. It doesn't make a lot of sense on paper, but I think in practice it does. It's really satisfying and really super fun for me. Maybe not for anybody else, but yeah, and I think that's kind of how we did it. Like, we completely respect the tradition of this music and what it means to the people who wrote it and who listened to it when it was written. But now we want to hear it in the way that we're feeling it, and maybe some other people will feel it the same way too, and maybe they won't, which is totally great. But yeah, I think that's kind of where we're coming from. So it's not a disrespect for the tradition of it, but it's through a filter of this complicated South American and North American and Eastern European kind of aesthetic.
Cool. And Daniel and Tracy, your approach, do you do mostly originals, mostly covers? For original work, how do you approach the process? I assume it's organic to some degree, and then sometimes these things get imposed on us. So how do you deal with it?
As of the present, we have one original song. But what
You did
song.
say you were new, that you guys just started doing this, so that's okay. Nothing wrong with that.
I think also borrowing from what seems like a common theme here, the resonance. Thanks for that, Andrew. I think when we first sat down and worked on that song, something really special happened. I had written that song with a little bit of a descending melody pattern. The voice is going down, just doing a major scale from the tonic. The guitar is going a major scale from the tonic, and my voice is a third higher, and there's these sort of, these intervals are kind of just going down the scale like you might do on a piano. And then Tracy came along and added an upward melody on her flute, and really took me by surprise. And some of the
Counterpoint is wonderful.
Sorry?
I said counterpoint is wonderful.
Yeah, counterpoint. Maybe we need to do more, think about counterpoint more. And just so SoGoBrook is a counterpoint between two people, really, and their different ways of listening. And it's just great for me to have someone to listen with and to challenge me to listen differently. I just the other day when we were practicing, Tracy announced that when a capo is on a guitar, it's slightly sharper. And she brought out a tuner to show me, and I realized, well, this is someone who listens really carefully because she has to tune her flute to the guitar. And she asked that I maybe change this to open chords or anyway, and I realized, and I had just seen her play the Brandenburg stuff, and I said, this is someone who listens to music in a different way. I'm sort of on autopilot. I think I know how to make my guitar sound good with the capo. So she comes along and tells me to take the capo off.
No, it's because I could hear these deeper resonances with the capo off. Not that it was better.
There is a difference.
But it was different, and the focus of the chord is on the note where if you go up to a different key, the focus of that chord is different and the resonances are different. So the stimulation for me to like improvise on it is different.
I hear you loud and clear.
And it's also great to have someone, with shared interests, and we're looking at these songs. Our repertoire consists of a really interesting mix of folk material, contemporary, a few slightly more contemporary songs, such as Waterbound by Dirk Powell. But I never really thought about it, and then Tracy said, well, what is Waterbound? Isn't it based on a different Waterbound? And she showed me Rhiannon Giddens' Waterbound, and I said, oh, well, actually, that's based on a traditional version of a different song called Waterbound. And I think for Tracy also, this song with its description of flooding is evocative of our time. It's more contemporary than ever. And so we're sort of in a conversation. Also, another song we intend to play on the 20th is Last Kind Words Blues by Geeshie Wiley. And she is a really fascinating woman. We just don't know much about her. One of the great blues songwriters and singers. And this is one of the great songs. But we've gone over the words with a fine-tooth comb. And do you have any thoughts about it, Tracy?
Well, Daniel told me that someone said that she murdered her husband and that she had kids, and she was probably beaten. And I had just heard that these two women senators, one from South Carolina, one Nevada, had they're trying to pass a bill that people who do take care of hair and fingernails and barbershops need to learn about domestic violence, so that oftentimes when people are relaxed, they'll notice, oh, you got a bruise here, or you got a black eye, or you got a cut. And then they'll say, oh, how are you doing? And they say, oh, I'm okay. And I say, oh, I see you have a cut. And then maybe they'll talk about it. And then that store says, oh, well, like this, maybe this will help you, and then something can happen to not let them get murdered in their domestic violence situation, but do something to change it. So we sang that song, and I thought about her, and she's talking, the last kind words is, well, and Daniel left off this. So I think she's talking about her lover. He left off this part about her lover, but also she's talking about her father and her mother talking to her, their last words before she dies. And so then as we were just playing along, I started to make up words to do a rap, which isn't that great, but it's okay, about the barbershop and hair thing about domestic violence and what it is. And Daniel spurts and, well, is it a guy? And I said, oh yeah. So then I started rapping from the guy's point of view. Yeah, I got this cut over my eye and it's from my wife, but she was raped by her dad, so she gets really angry a lot, and I could kill her, but then wouldn't that just be life? I love her, so I'm not going to kill her.
Wow. Okay, I got to. That's a fascinating place to stop. Maybe not ideal, but at the same time, we are running out of time. What I want to give, I'm really looking forward to getting to know all of you, even more musically, because this is really fascinating. But is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to share? I haven't heard anybody mention where we can hear your music, your websites, that kind of stuff. Is there anything you want to tell the folks who are going to be watching this at this time? Let's start with Denise and Andrew.
So we mean to record a lot more than we've recorded, but we do have 3 songs that are recorded on SoundCloud. So if you look up Vera Lata, Veralata, on SoundCloud, you will find 3 of our songs there. We also have a fair amount of content on YouTube now as well. And I think the announcements for the concert probably have that information on them. As far as anything you didn't ask, I think maybe one thing we didn't talk about is that Andrew plays the lap steel, which plays a very important role in the sounds that we make. And so that's definitely something to look forward to in the concert, listening to an instrument that's not as often seen as guitars, for example. And I don't know, is there anything else, Andrew?
I don't think so, except Daniel, maybe if you get a chance to answer this question at the end, did you used to see the punk shows in DC at like the 930 Club and places like that, or?
Yes, definitely. 930 was like the really big one, but there was a smaller one called DC Space that no longer exists, but it really had an incredibly intimate atmosphere. You feel like you were just like right up in front. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was in a ska band for a long time in the 90s, and we used to play at the 930 Club a lot, and it was always a lot of fun. That was a fun club.
All right, let me just say this. So Vera Lata, you don't have a website.
We have a site. We have a Facebook page.
Facebook page, but not a website.
We do also have a website, and I can send you the link to that.
Well, fine. I just want people to know if they want to go and find you, it's Facebook, and there is a website, right?
There is a website. I need to find the link.
You don't sound like you're familiar with it that much, which is pretty funny.
I think the best place to find information is on SoundCloud and on Facebook.
Right. See, this is an interesting issue that, a lot of folks who are doing the type of music we do have. It's like, okay, how do we plug ourselves in to the fact that the world revolves around websites now, particularly for artists, and everything else. So, it's always a struggle, and I have struggled with it incredibly, but I'm looking forward to finding everything. And then for SoGoBrook, what's your deal?
We have yet to really put ourselves out there in a way that would, give it due justice. We have some things we could put on YouTube now, like snippets, because we played at a community garden. So I'm going to just go ahead and plug my Bandcamp, because I think it does overlap with what we're going to do. Dan Sofaer, that's SOFAER.bandcamp.com. Okay. And you, and Tracy, what about you?
Well, I made two websites in like 2004, and one was acupuncturealternatives.com, and the other was citysolar.us, and then and healing and then innerbeing.net. So innerbeing.net has poetry on it. It has solar on it. It has acupuncture on it, and we could put SoGoBrook on it. We can make a SoGoBrook page for it, because I knew how to do that. I can probably do it again, and I just have I'm going to get a new computer. Also, I've been involved with something called the Love Tapes Collective, which is on Facebook, and we don't have a website, but we shot videos in like 73 all around New York City. It was called Lesbians Organized for Video Experience, and then me and somebody collected all the tapes, and then I got them digitized with another person, and they're being used in many different films and videos, because they're lesbian and gay people from the early 70s, about 5 or 6 years, but that's on Facebook. And so I don't like Facebook. It makes me angry. So I have not done that. And I also don't like Instagram too much. And it just irritates me that everything's owned by one. Anyway, but I'm going to have to do it. So eventually
I hear you. I'm not an Instagram fan at all. And I just tolerate Facebook, but I believe in websites. So that's the deal. Daniel, Denise and Andrew, you look like you wanted to add something. I saw your lips.
Well, I was actually going to say that we do have an Instagram page, and we're also not great fans of Instagram, but if you look up Vera Lata Music on Instagram, you will find us there. And on Facebook, it's also Vera Lata Music. And I just also wanted to say, in the context of, finding ways to get our information out there, that I'm really grateful for this opportunity to talk with you, Chris, and also for this concert. And it's also a great pleasure to hear about the SoGoBrook music, and I'm really looking forward to playing with you and sharing the stage, I think, for at least one song.
Oh.
Well, I have to say, this has been a great experience. Each of you, I know I could do a full hour interview with each of you because there's so much there and it's wonderful. I'm definitely going to have a great time as an audience member. I might even sneak my recorder in. On January 20th, Saturday, January 20th, we have SoGoBrook and Vera Lata are going to be performing at the Judson Memorial Church Assembly Hall at 8:00 p.m. We hope everybody comes. We hope you guys reach out to all your friends in the New York area and get them to come or to do the live stream option, because we do have the live stream option as well. I'll be performing the week before you, so I'll be able to relax and enjoy your performance because I won't be stressed out as I am now preparing for mine. So let's all cross-pollinate and support each other. It sounds good. And on that note, I'm going to wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, and an awesome New Year. And thank you again for joining me today. This is wonderful.
Very nice to meet everybody.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you. Have a great day.